Found something else wrong with this thing. I don't know if you can see it or not, but right here there's a little crack in this plastic case here, and I see up on top here a crack too. So I'm going to see if I can't glue that to fix it. This is it's an electrically operated servo that pushes through this on this plate here. As you can see when I'm pushing it, that moves the two shafts here back and forth that push and pull the ailerons, and they call it flaperons. It takes away some aileron control but gives you full length flaps is what it does. Works pretty good, and I do like this electrical actuation of the thing. The plane originally came with a manual lever that worked this, but I took that off because it was kind of hard to reach up and find it, and the notches in it weren't, real accurate. They weren't machined just right. And this works electrically. So you plug this in here, you'll notice I've got paint marks on a lot of these electrical connections. They're like trailer connections, trailer plugs I call them, but it's used to plug in for electrical supply, and the switch to operate the flaps is on the throttle here. You can push down or pull up on these switch depending on whether you want the flaps down or up. At the same time, you're controlling your power, so you can like put on the air brakes and give it the gas at the same time. So it can come in pretty handy when you're landing. Anyways, that's how it works. And what I'm going to do is take this little actuator off here and lubricate it up and see if I can repair this. I believe this got cracked. They were trying to lift the frame of the plane because they couldn't figure out how to jack it up, and they had a strap around here, because I spent quite a bit of time trying to get the strap off, and it was wrapped around here, and then there were some 2x4s up in the ceiling of the hangar. So I think they were trying to lift the plane by the root tube, which would be okay, except for I think it got up against this plastic case and cracked it. So I'm going to see if I can lubricate it up and fix that broken plastic on there. This right here, you'll see these little bumps on these plastic wheels here. These are cams, and they hit this micro switch here, and that's a limit switch, and that's why when your flaps go up, they're supposed to hit the limit switch and turn it off, so you're not going to smoke the motor if you're just holding your finger, on that switch. So when you hit the flap switch, this is what they call a limit switch. It just limits the travel, how far it'll run. This thing goes around one way or the other when you're going forward and backwards to put the flaps down. It's not real accurate. Most of the time it stops in the right place. Once in a while it'll maybe not get the flaps off all the way. But in general it works pretty good. And this is where you'd adjust it here with this screw. So that's why I got to repair this plastic case. You can see that corner's broken out, so I'm going to glue that back together just to keep water out of there and stuff. Maybe I'll lubricate this whole mechanism up. Right here is a hole where you can see the screw inside here. That's a screw thread that runs this linear actuator back and forth. And all this motor does, there's a motor that winds that stack of cams, it turns it on and off, and you can buy these on eBay, maybe between maybe $25 and $40, something like that. And you could put it on any airplane really if you want to have electric flaps on there. So they're fairly cheap, but of course you have to have the switch, to a reversing switch that'll make it go forwards and backwards. And anyways, why, you should lubricate this hole once in a while. And I'm going to lubricate this one up right now because it probably hasn't been lubricated since I put it on there. But now's a good time to do it since I got this actuator off the plane. The other thing I wanted to tell you is that these washers here, there's a stack of 3 of them, are actually spacer. That's a spacer to hold up one end of the linear actuator when you put it on the bolt. So when you take those off, don't lose them. Those are important where those go. And there's another spacer that goes on this side where it bolts to the root tube, but it's made out of plastic. Okay, you can see this is the bell crank, and these are the control cables. They're called Teleflex cables. They're used on boats. Mostly you get them boat shop. It steers the boat, turns the motor, outboard motor, and it pushes and pulls. But that's what works the controls on this Chinook, are those Teleflex cables. And you can see how it slides easily. The subplate that this bell crank is mounted on slides easily back and forth on these screws here. So you just put a little WD-40 or something on there, something that won't tend to attract too much dust, is my thinking on it anyway. And I wanted to show you now how I set the electric flap motor. It's called a linear actuator. Some people call it a linear servo. It has an electric motor here, and this is a screw thread that you can adjust. Now I want you to see where this hole is right here. This is important, that you want this hole a little bit longer, a little bit past this thing, so this subplate doesn't go all the way to the end of its travel, because that would put a strain on this motor. It has limit switches. So the first thing I did is I turned on the master switch here and used the flap lever to run the motor all the way back this way until it shuts off by itself. There's limit switches under this plastic cover. That's the thing I was fixing there, trying to seal that up. It doesn't get very dirty or dusty, and even water isn't going to get up this high because it's right under that cover that goes between the wings. So it's in a good, clean, dry spot, but I still thought I ought to fix that cover on there. Now, this hole right here, what I'm telling you about, that I say is important, right here, you want to make sure that this hole here is going to be this side of the full travel, so it's not up against the end of the slot, which is where it's sitting right now. That's against the end of the slot. You want it close, but this is going to have to move just a little bit that way to get it lined up. Now, how you set that for where that goes, I pull it against the end of the slot. You can turn this thing, and as you turn it, you'll see that it goes way past there, you see. But if you turn it too far the other way, it would be setting where it's going to put pressure on the end of the slot, and I don't want to do that. So the screw that goes in there, I'm going to put in, there's some spacers. I'll show you how I do that. But if you get it too far this way, it's going to pull against the end of that slot, and that's going to put a strain on the motor, and you don't need to do that. You want the motor to shut off by itself and just stop right there. And I get that by turning this thing. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and put the screw in there now and show you the spacers that go under there. There's a spacer under here that's just black plastic that holds this end up. This bolt goes through the root tube, clear down under here, right by the fuel shutoff valve here thing. See that lever moving back and forth? That's it. And when you turn it this way so it's pointing the hose, that's the way the fuel's going to go, down that hose. Okay, now this right here is just a nylon wire tie and a standoff to hold this particular fuel line away so it don't rub on anything. That's all that does. And each of them have a ball swivel on the end on this end of the linear actuator and that allows the actuator to, you know, move up and down and slide side to side and everything. So it doesn't bind up. That's what you want. Anyways, that's how this is hooked up, and I'm going to go get the screw and show you how I put this in there. What I'm going to do, these 3 washers right here are the spacers that I'm using to hold this end up, because it has to be a little higher. It doesn't pull down onto that hole. It's got to be higher than that. So the first thing I'm going to do is put some Loctite in this hole, and you want to use high strength Loctite. The high strength thread locker you want. And I'm going to put, oops, see if I can do this where you can see it. I put a little bit in that hole right there, because you can't put a nut on the other side of this thing. You can't put a nut because of this plate here. So, I mean, it has to slide back and forth, so you can't have a nut sticking down below this plate. So this is just a tapped hole in here, but it's a flat bottomed hole. It doesn't go anywhere. So you're going to put the 3 washers on there to space it, and then we're going to put this over there and put this down inside that hole. If I got it lined up right. Yeah, pretty good. Okay, now you want to put that screw in there. Now, so it won't, it's the screw, this particular screw is stainless. It's made so it won't go too deep and go past that plate. So see if I can put an Allen wrench. It's hard to hold a camera and do this stuff at the same time. So anyways, that's in there like so, and then you can snug it up, but it's got that thread locker in there now, see, so it won't go anywhere. So next what I'll do is I'll turn on the master switch, and you see, that's how it works there. So that's the flaps down, and this pulls them back up. Now I don't have any way to know how much flaps I'm putting on, so I just count how seconds I'm putting it down. So if I want 4 notches of flaps, I would just count off when I hit it, because the flaps are all the way up there. So I say 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. That's the 4th notch right there. That's all the way down. So I hope that's clear to everybody how that works. And like I say, this switch right here is what I'm working. It's on the throttle lever. That's the, you push it down, it's going to put flaps down, pull up, it's going to take them off, and you can feel it easy, because this is kind of a sharp edge on this switch that you can feel with your finger. So that's flaps down, that's flaps up, and they'll stop all by themselves. There's a limit switch that turns it off. Now we can turn off the master.